Vacatur or expungement.
Record restriction, sealing.
Criminal record relief.
It can take lots of different names depending on what jurisdiction you're in.
Criminal record relief is going to vary greatly, not even state by state, but jurisdiction by jurisdiction.
In my state, an expungement or a record restriction means law enforcement can still see that criminal history. It's not erased to everyone.
What we're really focusing on is how can we bring post-conviction relief to someone.
You are essentially erasing it. It never happened, and you don't have to talk about it on a job application. And an employer or somebody, whoever is looking at your criminal history, is not going to see it.
It won't show up for employers. It won't show up when you try to rent an apartment. It won't show up when they do anything for a mortgage or when you try to be a chaperone with your children's school. It won't be there.
Someone gets a fresh start. You don't have the stigma of having a prostitution conviction on your record, which really can and does close doors.
You can really see a person go from living and being prohibited from a certain set of opportunities to taking on a whole different set of dreams and hopes. It's like seeing a completely different trajectory start to form for someone.
If you are a survivor of sex trafficking or human trafficking and the law says we want to vacate it, that should be erased completely off your history for everyone.
So that the world can see them for who they are and not for what they've been through. And this also gives them an opportunity to be who they've always wanted to be without their history constantly being chained to them.
Vacatur is essentially a means of righting a wrong within the criminal justice system.
Protecting victims has always been the landscape of who we are in prosecution.
As a prosecutor, my job is to try to keep people safe, right?
What we've had to do, I think, is take the blinders off a little bit and expand what we see and how we classify our victims.
We get it. We understand the complicated nature of this crime, and we're not always just going to be black and white and see people as either, victim or defendant.
Our role is not just, lock them up and forget about it, that we have a much greater responsibility because we have so much autonomy and so much power as a prosecutor.
If you really have a true understanding, you're not going to see them as criminals, you're going to see them as victims.
We need to start recognizing and treating victims like they are as victims and not treating our victims as defendants.
Prosecution continues to evolve. Our understanding of human trafficking, like most things, continues to evolve. We have a better understanding of what victims go through as it relates to human trafficking now.
I'm quite confident in saying we can't arrest our way out of this. We have to help people. And this is the right thing to do. If we knew then what we know now, there would not have been the convictions. There would not have been the prosecutions.
We in law enforcement are re-examining our understanding of what led those individuals to come through our doors. That has allowed us to now go back and try to right some of the wrongs.
It's not easy. It's never easy to change a culture. And we are seeing that there are folks that are doing really amazing work to get that paradigm shift, to understand that we are just as responsible for accountability as we are for restoration in the criminal justice system.
We started to see those individuals as victims and presume that they were victims first, rather than immediately charging them and holding them accountable for the crimes that were really being perpetrated by somebody else.
A lot of these women and men are very, very traumatized by their encounters with law enforcement, and they're afraid to come in and meet with a prosecutor. We try to do that in the kindest way possible, in a way that supports and recognizes that it's not an easy thing to come in and speak about having been traumatized, about the rape experiences and the force experiences.
So I think that it is first properly defining what human trafficking is, and then secondly, truly understanding the victimization that it causes and what that looks like, and understanding the impact, I think, of the peripheral consequences, of a conviction.
The things that are done and you are forced to do to survive every day and to live another day are oftentimes things that you and I would never even contemplate or understand, but it's their daily life and they're just in it to survive day by day.
Human trafficking is an epidemic that has been hidden in plain sight for too long.
This is a crime of vulnerability.
It's taking advantage of somebody else when the opportunity presents, and there's a lot of people who are very vulnerable.
Traffickers, they really are targeting the most vulnerable. And when folks aren't able to get jobs, when they aren't able to be engaged, when they're kept in the shadows, those are the folks that traffickers are going after. We want to lift people out of the shadows so that they're no longer part of those vulnerable communities that traffickers are targeting.
So if we can erase that history, give somebody a fresh start, give them more opportunities, reduce barriers, that's going to make the community safer.
I think the 21st century prosecutor is really looking to be smarter on crime, not just, staying tied to the old philosophies of lock them up and throw away the key. We can't continue to operate in that manner.
I see it as a continuum of addressing the needs of survivors that we learn about every day.
The criminal justice system should constantly be reassessing the impact it has on communities. We should always be looking at our work and whether that work has had a positive impact or a negative impact and ways in which we can do better.
So we get to be internally and intellectually consistent in our stance on this crime.
I think that you need to have enough discretion as a prosecutor to truly understand the crimes that are coming across your desk and to be able to cater a best resolution and truly affect justice.
We should have that discretion to be making those calls and not holding people accountable for crimes that they committed, under duress or while they were in this cycle.
I think that prosecutors need to have the ability to have a very broad toolkit in administering justice.
We can have much more successful experiences when we view these as collaborative interviews and as collaborative approaches to dealing with this past criminal history that came from having been trafficked.
One of the best practices that any agency, a prosecutor's office or a social services or a nonprofit can do is be survivor informed and hopefully survivor led. So going out and talking to people in your community, and every community has a survivor, about your practices, the language you're using, the interactions, the communications.
You have to have collaboration that extends beyond your own particular office. You have to be willing to break down some of those silos and work with community-based agencies, whether it's your legal aid office or some of your direct service providers who are working within your community.
Collaboration is absolutely key. It builds credibility, it builds partnerships.
It is unique within law enforcement to be able to have relationships with indigent defender services where they call you and say, we'd like to bring someone in to meet with you because she came to us as a client who was arrested for prostitution, but she actually has information about someone who's a violent trafficker and she wants to cooperate with you as an authority.
The resounding conclusion is that without collaboration on all parts, community-based services, systems-based, and everybody in between, that we can't even really begin to address the issue.
And make it much easier for survivors to find peace, to find hope, and to find renewal without having all of these different consequences associated with it.
This gives us an opportunity to think about how can we help propel someone forward. And that's really positive. And we want to be part of that. That's part of justice, just as much as accountability is a part of justice. And we want to be part of that solution.